Republican colleagues, if you think we need to keep an eye on the federal government, why don't we start here? Will any of you rebuke this lawlessness and cruelty? Any one Republican senator? The second thing I want to say, Mr. President, is to really note something said yesterday by the President of the United States, Donald Trump. The year was 2018, 6 years ago. And President Trump challenged me and other members of the Senate to come up with an immigration plan for the United States that included his big, beautiful wall, if you remember. And so I went to work with several of my colleagues here and several on the Republican side to help write an immigration bill. And I ended up calling the White House when I thought we came up with such a bill, a bipartisan bill, and they said, come in and see the president this morning. Well, that kind of shocked me that I could get in that quickly to see him, but I appealed to my Republican colleagues and we went down to the White House together to meet with the president in the Oval Office. The meeting was historic. It turned out that others had been invited, Democratic and Republican senators and congressmen, to discuss the issue, and they frankly didn't agree with the conclusions which we brought to the president. The president spoke at length at his views about immigration. The conversation declined at some point to a level I'd never expected to witness in my life. The president started saying things about immigrants in ways I thought had never been said before in the White House. He used terminology which I'm not going to repeat on the Senate floor, but it referred to a phrase of S-hole nations. You can fill in the blank if you wish. But I was shocked to hear it, and I heard him refer to several countries in this fashion, and I thought to myself, how we reach a point that we discuss immigration in such crude and vulgar terms? After I left the White House, it leaked out what the president had said, and the White House denied it. They said it didn't happen. I said it did. They said I'm lying, to the point where two of my Republican Senate colleagues went on television several days later and said that I lied when I said the president made those statements. Well, yesterday at his rally in Pennsylvania, President Trump admitted that he had used the slur that I referred to earlier to disparage Haiti and African nations during that 2018 meeting with lawmakers, bragging about a comment that sparked global outrage during his first term. I want to put that in the record because for 6 years I have lived with the shadow of people saying that I misled the American people as to what the president said. Yesterday he admitted what he said. It's not for my sake, but for the sake of discussing this issue of immigration. We've got to get beyond crudity and vulgarity and what we've seen in the extreme in the last several months when it comes to immigration. I'll make it clear where I stand. We need an orderly process at our border, period. Second, we should never knowingly allow a dangerous person to come into this country. Third, if a person is in this country seeking legal status and commits a dangerous crime, they should be gone, period. Fourth, we cannot accept all of the people in the world who want to come to America and live in America at this point. I wish we could, but we can't. Some are important, and I want to stand up for them. We can't allow everyone. We need an orderly process to achieve this goal. We are a nation of immigrants, and I'm proud of that fact. I hope everyone is. Let's make sure we do immigration the right way. The reference in 2018 was an embarrassment to the White House, to the Oval Office, and to the presidency. I'm glad that the president has finally admitted what happened on that day. Mr. President, on a separate subject, for more than 3 months, Secretary Kristi Noem and President Donald Trump have used the city of Chicago as their personal playground for militarizing immigration operations. When they announced the start of this campaign, they called it Operation Midway Blitz. They promised to target and deport murderers, rapists, terrorists, the criminally insane, the worst of the worst. The results tell a different story. In an ongoing lawsuit, a judge examined whether Immigration and Customs Enforcement violated a consent decree preventing warrantless arrest of individuals without probable cause. In a list the administration presented, a list that came from the Department of Homeland Security, came from Secretary Noem, submitted to the federal court of more than 600 immigrants recently arrested. Do you know how many of them had a significant criminal history? 16. 16 out of more than 600. Nationwide, ICE has arrested nearly 75,000 people with no criminal history between January 20th and October this year. Federal immigration agents have arrested and detained the following as examples: a mother on her way to visit her 15-day-old baby in the NICU, a teacher at a preschool in front of her young students, day laborers, vendors, construction workers, and cooks simply trying to work hard, make a living, and support their families, Immigration agents arrested and detained at least 40 U.S. citizens in Illinois alone between late August and early November. Does that sound like we're getting rid of the worst of the worst? People with no criminal history, many of whom are citizens of the United States, not given the advantage of due process guaranteed by the Fifth and 14th Amendments? I've repeatedly warned that these actions amount to political theater to promote the president's anti-immigrant agenda and spread fear and reduce crime. I have cautioned that it is a slippery slope from this trampling of rights and liberties guaranteed by the Constitution. And I've urged my Republican colleagues, just one Republican colleague, to consider the possibility that these raids could come to a city they represent and they'd be faced with the very same reality. How might they feel then? Would they call out these abuses of power if that time came? Well, I regret to inform them that the time has come. After wreaking havoc in Illinois, Border Patrol official Greg Bavino and his traveling circus have hit the road and descended on more communities, including red states. Last month in Charlotte, North Carolina, a video posted to social media showed a U.S. citizen construction worker being swarmed by federal agents while he was in his vehicle. They proceeded to smash the truck's window and handcuff him while verifying his citizenship. The man said the agents, quote, didn't believe I was an American citizen and wanted to know where I was born. He was released only after the agents verified his citizenship. In a separate incident, this one in Louisiana, a viral video showed a silver unmarked SUV pulling up to a woman and two masked agents exiting to chase her. She repeatedly yelled she was a U.S. citizen and to, quote, leave her alone before making it to her home. Other states, including Florida and Texas, have also witnessed increased federal immigration enforcement operations. These types of confrontations with federal agents that we are seeing in the streets of many American cities will unfortunately continue unless we speak up. The lack of professionalism and the use of overly aggressive tactics and excessive force is sad but not surprising. The Trump administration has surged ICE hiring with the goal of onboarding 10,000 new agents by the end of the year. That would more than double the number of deportation officers from the current number of 6,000 to 16,000. The Trump administration should be working to improve screening, hiring, and training of recruits before unleashing them in the streets of America. Instead, they have lowered requirements for ICE agents, including loosening the age restrictions for prospective agents and shortening the training period from 13 weeks to merely 6 weeks, and giving each of the new ICE recruits a $50,000 cash bonus. This approach has proven woefully inadequate and downright dangerous. Recent reporting suggests these new lower hiring standards have resulted in ICE recruits who have barely been able to read or write, failed drug tests, displayed tattoos associated with gangs and white supremacists, failed to meet basic physical fitness requirements, and even have pending criminal charges. Secretary Boehm calls this her dream team. Her dream team. In one instance, the staff at a Georgia-based federal law enforcement training center where recruits are trained were left shocked when a student asked to be excused from class to attend a court case that he faced on a gun charge. A male recruit reportedly barged into a female dorm at one of these training facilities after bar hopping and harassed the occupants. Another recruit groped a woman. People, the dream team of Secretary Boehm that President Trump is attempting to release onto our streets to restore law and order. With these lower standards, the troubling incidents I've described are definitely going to increase. Given all this, I ask my Republican colleagues, if you think we need to keep an eye on the federal government, why don't we start here? Will any of you rebuke this lawlessness and cruelty? Any one Republican senator? What will it take for you to finally do so? We ought to be united in calling out these abuses. Secretary Noem wants to play dress up in her camo wardrobe, demanding government jets to tour her battleground states, brag about her dream team of masked secret police, arrest ordinary people who are working hard on tough jobs with what I believe is an attempt to change basic constitutional principles. We have to stand up and speak out. Is this what America is really all about? I yield the floor.
What we witnessed on that Senate floor was not simply a partisan exchange. It was a reckoning with memory, with power, and with the meaning of constitutional government. Senator Dick Durbin rose first to revisit a moment from 2018, a meeting in the Oval Office where immigration reform was on the table. He described how he worked across the aisle, how Republican and Democratic lawmakers came together to craft a bipartisan proposal at the request of President Donald Trump. He recalled walking into the White House believing that compromise was possible. But what he says unfolded instead was something far different. Language so crude, so divisive, that he refused to repeat it on the Senate floor. For 6 years, Durbin said, he carried the weight of being accused of misrepresenting that meeting. And now, according to his remarks, the former president has publicly acknowledged using the very slur that sparked global outrage at the time. Durbin framed that admission not as personal vindication, but as something larger, a warning about how immigration discourse in America has descended into vulgarity and spectacle. He insisted that the nation needs an orderly border. He said clearly that individuals who commit serious crimes should be removed. He acknowledged that America cannot accept everyone who wishes to come. But he drew a sharp line between enforcement and degradation, between policy and contempt. And then he pivoted. For more than 3 months, he argued, the Department of Homeland Security under Secretary Kristi Noem, alongside President Trump, has turned Chicago into what he called a personal playground for immigration operations. He referenced Operation Midway Blitz, a campaign publicly framed as targeting the worst of the worst. But Durbin cited court filings and federal data suggesting that out of more than 600 individuals recently arrested in Illinois, only 16 had significant criminal histories. He stated that nationwide, nearly 75,000 individuals with no criminal record had been detained during the same period. Those numbers matter. They matter because they test the narrative. They test whether enforcement is narrowly tailored to dangerous individuals or broadly applied in ways that sweep up workers, teachers, mothers, even American citizens. Durbin described incidents in Illinois, North Carolina, and Louisiana in which citizens were detained, questioned, even physically restrained before their citizenship was verified. He asked a simple but searing question. Does this look like a strategy focused only on public safety? Or does it resemble something else? He went further, pointing to the administration's aggressive recruitment of immigration agents, a plan to expand the force from roughly 6,000 deportation officers to 16,000. He criticized shortened training periods, relaxed hiring standards, and cash bonuses of $50,000 per recruit. He referenced troubling reports of recruits with pending charges, questionable affiliations, and behavioral misconduct during training. He said Secretary Noem calls them her dream team. He called them something else, a dream team of masked secret police. That phrase was not accidental. It was designed to provoke, to conjure an image of federal agents operating in unmarked vehicles, wearing masks, conducting operations in American neighborhoods. Durbin challenged his Republican colleagues directly. If you believe in limiting federal overreach, why not start here? If this were happening in your state, would you speak out? Behind the political theater lies a deeper constitutional debate. The Fifth and 14th Amendments guarantee due process. They are not suggestions. They are guardrails against arbitrary state power. Immigration enforcement exists within that constitutional framework, not outside of it. And when citizens are detained, when individuals with no criminal record are swept into operations framed as public safety crackdowns, the burden of justification grows heavier. This is not a question of whether America should enforce its laws. Every nation must. It is a question of how that enforcement is conducted, with precision or with spectacle, with restraint or with aggression, with accountability or with impunity. Durbin's speech was, at its core, a plea for balance, an orderly border, clear standards, respect for constitutional principles. He warned of a slippery slope, that normalizing aggressive tactics today could erode protections tomorrow. That political theater can harden into institutional habit. But beyond the statistics and the sound bites, there is something more at stake. America has long described itself as a nation of immigrants, a republic governed by law, not by impulse. The Oval Office is meant to elevate discourse, not degrade it. Federal agents are meant to uphold constitutional rights, not test their limits. When rhetoric becomes crude and enforcement becomes theatrical, trust begins to fracture. And trust, once broken, is not easily restored. The Senate chamber fell quiet as Durbin yielded the floor. But the questions he raised remain unresolved. What does justice look like in practice? How far can executive power stretch before it bends the Constitution itself? And who will speak when those boundaries are tested? In the end, this is not only about Chicago, or Pennsylvania, or a rally admission 6 years after the fact. It is about whether America's institutions are strong enough to withstand political winds without losing their moral compass. History will remember not just what was said, but who stood up and who remained silent. If you believe in accountability, in constitutional government, and in the power of informed citizens, stay with us. Subscribe to Liberty Report USA. Support our work to expose the truth. The